Yeah, everything's running. Hello, chat. Hello, everyone. Hi. Welcome to Broman Podcast episode 134. I am joined this week by Steven Spohn, the COO of AbleGamers charity, and as we were discussing previously, longtime internet friend.
That's true. We've been longtime internet friends who are both busy as heck and heck.
So busy. That's every time we try to get together and do stuff, I'm like, I always feel bad. I'm like, yeah, no, totally. And then it's like meetings or something, and it's like, well, that's being a COO, I'm sure.
I mean, it's being internet celebrity like you. It's being COO like me. Yeah, you should literally see our DM said. It's nothing but one of us messaging the other going, oh yeah, let's do this day, and the other one going, I can't, what about this? And then a 6-month gap, and then a response going, yeah, how about this? And then the other one going, no, I can't do that. It's great.
We're always, it's, you know, you just gotta keep trying.
And it worked. Eventually, we're here.
Yeah, and now we're here. So like, I'm super curious. I don't know a lot about like the jobs and duties of a COO. So like, I think that it would be like, first of all, really interesting to just know like, what is the day-to-day of like that position?
You know, I think it's like a lot of people don't kind of like, they think COOs and they think like the right hand of the CEO, and it's like whenever the CEO goes off in their golden parachute ride, that's you know, the guy waiting in the wings. But it's actually just the person that is supposed to run around and do whatever's needed. So I've done everything from sending those emails that you get to say thanks for a $5 donation, all, you know, to getting onto videos on NBC, to, you know, mailing out PR people just to try to get a key for the website and get denied, and you know, like everything in between. I right now my primary responsibility is director of peer support, which is essentially I get to oversee the part of our charity that allows people to come to us and say, hey, I have this disability, I want to play this game, and we figure out how to bridge their desires with their abilities and figure out how to get them playing games, which is honestly it's a good job. It's not a bad job to have at all. But yeah, it's like wearing a lot of hats, is what pretty much COO should stand for, being everywhere at all times.
Yeah, I can relate to that. So that really preps you like that. So you were just right out the gate. I'm sure you were excellent at that. I actually don't know. When did you? Yeah. When? So.
An egg, and I was like, ta-da, COO.
So like, but like compared to I guess which happened first for you? Did you start streaming? I apologize. I could have done my research better on LinkedIn. Were you streaming first, or were you COO first?
No, I was. So I actually found AbleGamers because I personally needed help gaming, and it was very much a, you know, fair club for men, no offense, kind of thing. Where, you know, I was a member, not just a client, and it, you know, the thing for me was it was always evolving. You know, I went from, you know, a guy who was writing articles for the website to the position I'm in now because I was just doing work. I mean, that's honestly, you want the secret sauce to how Bro got where he is and where I got where I am, and we work all the time. We're not, I mean,
true.
I don't want to speak for you, but I think I probably can, is that we're not necessarily masters at what we do. We just do it all the time.
Yeah, it's especially for me, like the creative part of my job, it's very much like a continuous experience. Like it's the part of my brain that's just running all the time. It doesn't really
turn off, right?
Yeah, it doesn't really stop.
Never. Yeah. And so I was, you know, doing the AbleGamers thing since I was 26, and I didn't start streaming until almost a decade later. I actually didn't want to stream. My good friend Craig Kaufman, Craigums on the internet, he basically talked me into it. He was just like, you know, you really need to just go do this Twitch thing. Like, we're making friends with streamers, and you have these people who will support you if you just go do it. And I'm just like, I don't want to, because the internet's going to be mean, and you know, I already deal with harassment and negative comments, you know, on social media. It's I don't need more of that. And he was like, well, just give it a shot, see how it goes. And he taught me about moderators and how powerful they are. And you know, I gotta tell you, I jumped in with 2 feet, and I have not looked back since. It's been amazing here, and I gotta say, for every one troll, there's 100 nice people, and I was not expecting that ratio, and it's just so heartwarming that it is that way.
That really is the truth. I think sometimes it can get a little obscured, from folks that like everybody's angry today, and it's like, well, like, let's take a step back. There's been like 4 or 5 really angry people in chat today, so it's just like 4 or 5 angry people, and I think people spend so much time focusing on that, but everyone else that's there is still having a good time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's not like, I mean, like our mutual friends like Lupo, like we've all had bad days on camera where we're just, angry, and, sometimes people get under our skin or the armor breaks, and you're finally just like, slamming a troll against the wall. And, that has to happen. I mean, our friend, Nega Oryx just going viral for slamming that troll. I mean, she did so great at that. And sometimes that side of you has to come out because a troll just gets under you the wrong day. But I'm just so glad that those experiences are so rare because most people are just awesome.
I have a really deep fundamental agreement with that statement, right? Like, I think most people are awesome. Like, that's why like charities can even exist. Like, as cynical as people get and the internet gets, like, if you look at the entire charitable space as a whole, it's like a whole bunch of people with like different like gifts and like skills, and they're all trying to make the world a better place all the time. And there's all these people that are enabling them. And yeah, people are awesome. Chat, you're awesome.
They are, and it's kind of funny because I can see how some people are like, man, these guys are buttering up chat right now, and I can see how it could look that way. But it's also just, I believe it's your philosophy and it's my philosophy, in that there's good in everybody, and that most people are gray Jedi, and most of us are just walking through life doing the best we possibly can. And some people lack some empathy. Some people could learn some life lessons. But for the most part, we want to do good. Some of us may not understand or not be very good at being good. But, with a little bit of guidance and with the right influence, I think you become a better person.
Yeah, it's funny, like, doing good takes like practice, right? Like, your first, like, I think that like when I was growing up, I thought that there was this idea like, oh, like, you just do the good thing. Like, everything's presented, at least when I was growing up, everything was presented like it's good or bad. Like, there was no gray area. And the reality is, like, there's a lot of choices that you can make with something when it happens. There isn't always an obviously good choice, and sometimes people do like make bad choices, get mad. I've definitely gotten mad and slammed a troll against the wall a few times myself. But when it comes back to like focusing on like the positive people and like not necessarily like buttering up chat, I think that we have like that tendency. It just makes me think of that tendency to assume that things are bad, when in reality, it's things are pretty all right. Like, things are like things, like, we can appreciate the things that we have. This is like a very new thing for me because I've been dealing with like a lot of really hard things over the past year, and now I have this appreciation, not just like for myself, but I feel like I have a deeper appreciation of when, if somebody else is mad and is a jerk to me, I have a deeper appreciation of how bad of a day they might be having, because, I was finally able to admit to myself when I was having bad days.
And I think that's part of being a grown-up, right? I think, I got to interact with James Gunn on Twitter one time. He had lost someone, and he was talking about that he had smiled that day, and I took that tweet and I quote tweeted it, and I said, I smiled the day that my grandma died, and I smiled the day that I lost the ability to drive my wheelchair, because you still have to laugh. You still have to smile. It doesn't mean that you're not sad. It doesn't mean that something terrible is not happening, but you can still experience joy, and people can still, for a brief moment, make you distracted from that deep sorrow. And that's what I think people don't understand their superpower can be, is if you can bring a smile to someone's face when they're having a horrible day, that is your superpower. You did that thing.
I saw when I was like looking over everything, getting ready to chat today, I saw the Stan Lee quote that you have. Yeah. And it's very something that I've been doing recently is like learning a little bit more about Stan Lee and Jack Kirby,
Yep.
and the philosophy that they put into the things that they created, and like why they created those things. And it's very inspiring to hear them talk about the characters they create. But for me, hearing Stan Lee like talk about himself was one of the most inspiring things I've ever heard. He gives this whole explanation about why he likes to write and what he loves to write, and he enjoys writing for himself because he's excited to find out what's going to happen next. So he always just wrote what he thought was interesting, and it turned, and he thought he was different than other people, and it turns out that he's like, that wasn't true. And I found that to be really inspiring, because
I love him.
Hearing him say that, like, there's obviously like like that was a moment of self-awareness for him when he released these comics, and like God knows what else was going into trying to make that happen. And then to have it suddenly become this cultural force, and then so incredibly transformative, like, it really is, for me as like a creative person, it's like that, hearing him cross that gap, between like his like, I'm only doing this for myself, but then it turns out that I'm not that different than everyone else. Like finding that commonality with everybody, that was just really profound to me. So I wanted to ask you, do you have like a Stan Lee? I assumed from the quote that this would be a safe question to ask, but like, what is it about him or his work that inspires you?
I mean, yeah, so the reason I have that quote up on my bio is because it's one of the themes that run through who I am as a person. I am somebody who always likes to not only try to say that I'm making good choices, but I'm somebody who likes to think that you do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And I think that we saw that with, a lot of social injustice issues from a lot of things that have happened over the last 2 years. I think we saw people standing up when they needed to. We saw people kneeling when they needed to. We saw people doing what they needed to do. And that to me is what makes superheroes. And to me it's a very meaningful quote. There's a funny part in the Ryan Reynolds movie Deadpool 2, where the character Colossus is saying a giant speech about, like, everybody thinks the superhero is always a superhero. Wake up a superhero. Brush your teeth as a superhero. It's about these moments and these choices, and they turned it into a joke. But I always loved that is a kernel of truth. That sentiment is actually very real. That being a superhero is just a matter of making the right choice at the right moment to help someone in need because it needed to be done, and no other reason than that.
Man, ooh, I got goosebumps. This is a really good conversation. So I wanted to.
You said philosophical, so we're going philosophical.
Yeah, we definitely did. But I did want to go back a little bit, since we were kind of talking about the process of you getting to the position that you're in right now. You said you started with just writing, and then sort of like taking on more responsibilities. Was that Was that a manifestation of this concept in your life? Like, you were like writing these papers and you saw something else that needed to be done for your organization and just did it? Was that part of your process?
Yeah, I think I just have a little bit of a different outlook on life than I think a lot of us do. So, my disability is called spinal muscular atrophy. And essentially, what that means is that my muscles are getting weaker over time. So, I'm losing abilities. So, when I was younger, I was never able to walk, but I could lift food up to my mouth and I could drive a power wheelchair with a joystick and, I could breathe on my own. And now I have a ventilator that's essentially life support, and I drive with a little tiny thumb joystick under my thumb into a wheelchair, and I can't move my arms off this mouse. And as I get weaker, eventually my end will be something, uh, either drowning in my own mucus or some other horrible thing that nobody wants to think about. But I think about it, right? Because I
Right.
know that's my end point. Eventually, I'm going to lose the ability to breathe. Eventually, I'm going to lose the ability to talk and eat, and I know that's my future. Whereas you don't know what your future end is. You could be hiking, you could be writing a book. Who knows
Yeah.
what it is you're going to be doing, right? So I know that mine has a finite clock above my head, and I know it's ticking. And although we all do, a lot of us ignore that clock, right?
Yeah.
So what threads through everything that I do is always pointing people back to that clock and saying, "Listen, pay attention to that clock above your head, that it's ticking, and be aware of the time that you're using." And so that helped me in decisions like doing this. So the funny story behind the start of mine at Able Gamers was I literally was just being a sassy little brat. I was 25 or so. I had been typing around the internet looking for solutions for people with disabilities. I was in the lower levels of MLG playing a game called Star Seas Tribes. And, I was really actually pretty good at like jumping in the air and shooting people midair, which was hard to do in that game. And I was losing that ability. I didn't want to. I wanted to keep going. And what ended up happening was I found Able Gamers, and this article said you can't play World of Warcraft only one-handed, and I'm like, I'm basically doing that with my hands on a mouse, essentially one-handed. Although I'm using two hands, it's just my mouse. I know I can do this, Mark Varley, you idiot. And then, you know, and so he emails me back. He's like, "Yeah, you think you can do better? Then write it yourself." And I'm like, "All right, I will." And then I wrote it. And so instead of jettisoning me out the nearest airlock, which is what he should have done, he challenged me to fix it, and I did. And when I did, someone came to me and thanked me for doing it because it allowed them to play. And I felt that feeling of when you help someone else, and I was like, "Oh, doggy, I want to feel that again." And so, a very famous person once said that charity is the most selfish thing you can do because it makes you feel great. And I fully agree with that. What I do, what I am in this world is to help other people, but it also makes me feel good to help others. So I try to spread that around, and I try to let people know that that origin of me starting this process, as you called it, was me just being an average, selfish young 20-year-old that was just like me, haha, you jerk, you don't know what you're talking about, and it turned into a really cool thing that I probably wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for that. So, a butterfly effect, you never know what the next step's gonna take you.
That is that's like it's like poetic that you feel like it started with selfishness and it's ended, like it's ended up here, right? With being able to be selfless all the time. At least that was my like takeaway. That's like incredible parallels to so much.
I don't know if that would work that way for everybody, but I like to think it would. I like to think that, the whole I never know about dangerous parables like, if you give $1, you'll get back tenfold and that kind of thing. Like I
Yeah.
think that could be a dangerous kind of thing, but I think, when we're talking about just being good to one another, I don't know if karma exists, but I do know that in my life, I can't speak for everyone out there who's listening or you personally, but when I am a nice person and I do good things do tend to happen in my life. And when I'm a jerk and pushing people away and being all kind of spiny, doors tend to close. So I feel like there really is something to do good things, and good things happen.
I completely agree. You know, it's incredible what just trying to do good can do for you. Like that's you mentioned that it comes back around, that it feels awesome. Like I completely agree. Like there's no better, like when you really help someone and you're like, wow, like that was actually helpful, because you can tell.
Yeah.
You can tell like when you helped, and you can tell like when you helped, like when you really helped, and like that feeling, yeah, it's life-changing. It is a life-changing feeling. And it's so, I mean, even for me, like seeking to try and help, like that's how this podcast started, because I wanted somewhere for there to be like a resource for newer broadcasters, and now it's evolved into like more of an amazing space to have great conversations like this. But like this was because I just wanted to help, and you know, a lot of other things. And usually, well, I guess traditionally, like I don't ever really expect anything back. I'm just like, this is nice. Like, it's nice to be able to do this for somebody, to help, especially if it's like something you've had to deal with before.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I find just doing your part, and I find one of the biggest life lessons I learned is that you just treat people, no matter their size or their influence, the same. I made one of my best friends in the video game industry. It took a long time before I could say who this was, because she wouldn't let me, but now she's okay with it. But I had an appointment at one of the first PAX East. Like the very first PAX East, I had an appointment with a woman named Andrea Renee from a little known IGN outlet. And I had a blogger who had about 6 followers on blogger.com. And I was with the blogger when Andrea Renee came up, was like, "Hey, I'm Andrea Sosa," and I'm like, "Hey, hold on a minute. I'm talking to this person. Please wait, and I will get to you soon." And I made her wait, and I finished my interview with this blogger and did all that, and it took another like 14, 15 minutes, and then I wished her on her way, and I was like, "Okay, hey, now it's our appointment time. How are you doing? Nice to meet you. I'm so glad you. Thanks for coming by." And she's like, "No one's ever held me up like that. Like, I'm so impressed. Like, that is exactly what you should have done." I'm like, "Thank you. You don't treat someone different because they can give you more exposure or more money or a better opportunity. You treat people like you should treat people, no matter what they can do for you." And it made me a best friend. And that's again that karma thing I talk about. Like,
Yeah.
I got a really good friend out of just being genuine. And I think there's a lot of people out there who would have been like, "Andrea Renee, oh my gosh." And, she's awesome. And I can understand why people would want to, but you can't just brush people off because of their size. It comes back to bite you, and it's not being a good person.
Yeah. It's an important skill to develop, because it especially if you're used to doing it, right? Like I'm sure in that moment for you, that was like a habit, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm with this person. So like, it doesn't matter who you are. You need to wait, because this is how life operates. And it's, my parents were very much kind of, in the same vein of thought, like raising me, like you want to know like if you're going to school, you want to know all your teachers, you want to know everybody that, all the janitors, you want to know like all the landscaping people and all the coaches, like you want to know everyone, because they're all part, and you should, my mom was very into making sure we always said thank you to them, at least like intentionally once a year, because they allowed your life to run there. They allowed you to learn. And so it was always, like you have to, like everyone is helping each other, and so everyone's like equal in that way. I guess that's how my brain translated as a kid. But it's important, because when you can treat everyone equally, you're never going to get, if you're in a situation where you're expecting to work with somebody who you might even be excited to work with, you're not going to get starstruck, because you're going to be able to just view them as a person and do your job, and then you can freak out later, which is something I've done, many times.
I'm sure every time you look in the mirror, you're like, "That guy's famous."
Oh my God.
But I think it's interesting. You and I have a commonality in our upbringing because my mom actually taught me a very similar lesson. She taught me to ask the name of all of the janitorial staff at my high school and to find out who everybody was there and not to look down on anyone because you thought their job was quote unquote lowly. Like find out who they are. And more than once did befriending people end up paying off for me because I didn't treat people different. Again, being a nice person is as much selfish as it is a good thing to do. Like make friends. It does not hurt you in any way to be a nice person. That's always the thread of my arguments. And like, I'm sure you have seen me numerous times arguing about Sekiro and whatnot. I'm always like, listen, if it's option A and option B, option A excludes some people and option B includes everyone, which one should we choose? This is not hard.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you brought up Twitter and social media because I wanted to talk about this here too. But like, I think that you are like one of the best users of Twitter I've ever seen in my life. And I really, if you are not following at Steven Spohn on I always, okay, it's Spawn, but then when I read it, but then when I read it for the Twitter handle, I'm like, oh my God, why is it messed up?
Everybody wants to say Spoon. That's why I ended up putting actually.
I know. I saw.
I know. You know why I did that? I literally had an interaction with Jake Tapper where he read my tweet on air and he didn't read my name. And when I asked him afterwards, he was like, yeah, I didn't know how to pronounce your last name. I didn't want to butcher it, so I just didn't say it. And I'm like, F that. I'm putting it in my damn bio from now on.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. It's very helpful for me. I have dyslexia, so it's like the letters get jumbled sometimes.
I'm glad that's helpful.
Oh man, yeah, it's well. I saw it and I was like, oh my God, I can say it out loud. And then like I walked myself. It was amazing. Like I can't say enough good things about your Twitter account. The way that you use it, the way like you're witty, you're humorous, you're factual, and you're always honest. You're never afraid to just be honest.
Yeah, I think honesty is part of who you have to be. I mean, I appreciate the compliment. I think there's lots of people who have unfollowed me who would disagree with you, but I appreciate everyone who sticks around. I think one of the harder things for me is about Twitter, same as Twitch, is I'm not single focused. I don't focus on just disability topics. I don't focus on just self-help on Twitter. I don't focus on just one game on Twitch because in my opinion, life is just so short. Again, going back to that lens that I have of the ticking clock, there's a lot of things I want to do and experience. And, so I think that raw honesty, it is a big turnoff to a certain amount of people. And I think to other people, it's a huge magnet. I think it draws some people to me. So I like the people that I've collected along the way.
I think that, something that I've learned about honesty and like being always honest all the time. If people are having a hard time being honest with themselves, seeing anyone else be honest is like jarring. You're like, wait, you can't do that. That's not all right. And then
I actually literally had someone in my very, very close circles one time told me, they were like, listen, you really should tone down the positivity. And I was like, why? And they were like, I'm literally having people come up to me and say, is Steve really this person? Because he feels really disingenuous. And I'm like, okay, why were they saying that to you? And they're like, well, they don't think you can be that happy all the time. And I'm like, I'm not happy all the time. It's just I choose not to be angry and sad. It's a choice that I'm making. And it is funny because, yeah, you're right. Sometimes people who don't want to view positivity, it's a big like, I'm just going to stay away from you.
It's hard. It's hard to take in a positive viewpoint when you're really trying to convince yourself that everything sucks. I was a cynical guy for a while. And yeah, when I was cynical, that was when I acted like a jerk when people were just genuinely nice. Legitimately,
I could see that.
So anytime somebody's a jerk to me when I'm trying to be nice, I'm just like, okay, like, sorry you're having a bad day. Like, I've been there.
I don't know if this ever happened to you. I'm guessing it has, but I literally had someone who was in my chat every single day for like a year straight, just straight up disappear one day. And all streamers know you lose regulars from time to time. Life happens. You say the wrong thing and they don't want to come back. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. They just disappear. But one of them came back like 6 months later. And they were like, "Hey, I just wanted to tell you, like, hey, I'm back now, and I missed being here, but I got to be honest with you, the reason I couldn't be here is I was just in a really dark place, and I didn't want to be brought out of it. You were just really good at cheering people up, and I just wanted to be sad, so I just stayed away." And I was like, I literally stopped in my tracks midstream and was like, "That is the nicest compliment I've ever received."
That is incredible. Wow.
Yeah, right?
I've definitely had some people like disappear and then, longtime folks like leave and then come back. There's a few of my regulars right now that just that have flat out told me that they hated me the first time they encountered me. They were like, I didn't like it. You were always telling jokes and you were just happy and you were laughing. And I just thought you were a child. Like, I was like, look at this grown child. And they were like, but now, like, that's what you're like. So fine. And like, it's like this reluctant acceptance of the joy and laughing. But yeah, people have a hard time being around, I guess, mental influences that they don't want. That's hard when you're trying to feel a feeling and somebody's trying to change your mind. It's depression is a weird thing. That's for sure.
It is. And yeah, that to me was just some good, your story and mine both are good examples to me of sometimes, maybe the positivity is a little bit off-putting, but, again, if that's what you want to be, then you got to be true to yourself and you got to move on and be the person that you want to be.
Yeah, I have found that any time in my life where I was feeling like really mentally run down or like I can't do it anymore, it's usually because at some point along the way I had made a series of choices where I just decided to like, oh no, I need to change. Like, I can't be like this or I can't be like that. I have to be this person because this is the person that fits. And that always ended up making me feel like really exhausted.
Yeah.
And it's not until I started sort of accepting that I shouldn't live my life in this optimized, like, algorithmic way where my stream schedule and everything is like lined up on the clock perfectly with all of the data. I did that for a while and it drove me absolutely out of my mind. I just felt like uncomfortable constantly. Right. So a huge part of that, and just hearing you talk about it, it's like reinforcement. It's like a big hug for my brain.
That's what I try to do.
Yeah.
Big hugs for brains.
Yeah. Hearing you talk about how, like opening up and being who you are, like if that's who you are, then it's who you are. Like it's your way. It's your way of being, and nothing that and I've tried. Like there's not really a way out of your body and your mind pushing you to be the person that you are.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. One of the life lessons for me that led me to that was I have a friend who has a diagnosis of some emotional challenges that they face. And, one of the things that they had said to me on their journey to try to be a better person was, this is the version of me that people like. And so that's who I am. And I'm like, well, is that who you want to be? And they're like, well, no, I want to be the sarcastic person that tells crass jokes and pushes people away. I'm like, okay, that's the kind of jokes you want to make. But look beyond that. Do you want friends? Do you want to be able to connect with people? And they were like, yes. And that sort of is what made it to the point where they got into being who they really wanted to be.
That's such a powerful constraining statement that I think a lot of us make to ourselves, that this is the version of me that people like. Like, I think that I have personally said that to myself before. And I'm sure folks that are listening have said that before. And, recognizing that that's what you were doing is like for me, it was like a huge part of getting out of it. Like, wait a minute. Well, then, like, if that means I'm not really making any choices for myself if I'm just like being whatever. So
yeah,
that's incredible.
I don't know. I mean, you tell me. I mean, like, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. I mean, sometimes I feel like people go with what they think they want to be, but they don't think beyond to what they're going to get from their actions. And I think if you can push people to look beyond that, like, okay, you like being the funny joke teller and you like to cut up on people, but do you realize that that makes people feel bad? And do you realize that you could tell jokes in a different way to make people laugh and that you get the same joy? And it'll make them stop and be like, huh, okay. Or you tell them, well, think about your inner thoughts, your inner thought patterns. If I was to talk to you the way that you talk to yourself, would you like me? If the answer is no, then you need to change how that thought process works.
Yeah, what was the question that did it for me? It was, if somebody talked to you the way that you talk to yourself in your head, what would you do to that person? And the first thing I said was like, oh, I'd fucking kill him. Like, that was the first thought that popped up after this. Like, I think it was like a guided meditation introduced that. And I was like, oh, okay. So like, there's a problem with your inner voice, huh? And like, I think part of it is, right. Like you asked about, like people trying to be somebody without thinking about what's going beyond that. I think that for me at least, it was like I had a whole bunch of guideposts that were set out for me in life by other people. And I had just sort of been like walking along them for a long time. And I made like a couple of big transitions, but a lot of these older habits that I had from, my baggage came with me. And it wasn't until I realized like, oh, somebody else put all these goalposts here. Like somebody else built all of the fence that tells me like where I can and cannot play in my own mind. And what I should do is just decide how I want this to look. And so a huge source of my like unhappiness and my frustration and my choices to constrain myself and try to be like the person that other people like was all because, I was trying to work inside of this framework that I didn't create myself. I think it's very important because you talked about like your inner thoughts, like your inner life and what's going on in your head. It is it's so difficult. And I wish I'm still on this journey right now. And I wish I had better words for it, but something that I'm very passionate about is definitely helping people understand that like one of the reasons why you can look at a day that feels like it should be great and you still think that it sucks is because you have there might be some stuff in your head you need to clean out. There might be some decisions that somebody made for you when you were like 8 years old. And that's just how you've done X or Y your whole life. And it's gone unexamined and it's now like harming you. I had tons of behaviors like that. And it's incredible how you can be like, my life is an interesting parable for this. Like I had more, you mentioned like when we were talking, like I was hard to talk to when we first met because like I was being really successful. And in that period of my life, I should have felt like, oh, like so successful. I should feel more free and open to kind of do anything I want. And I never really felt more tied in by my own expectations of myself, performative expectations that, my father and mother had put in my head, like associated with like finance and like providing and all of this other stuff. And then, so just a whole lot of these rules that didn't belong to me. And coming out of that and realizing that the reason everybody says like stuff's not going to make you happy is because if you are still mentally constraining yourself, or if you're letting other people draw the lines about what you can do in your own head, you don't really get to be yourself. And that's what you need to do to be happy.
Agreed. It's one of the things I think we have the hardest time learning as far as life lessons go, is that you use the word journey, and the problem with the word journey is it implies that there's a destination. The destination is the grave. That's what we're all ending at the same point. It's a grave. And the point is the journey. You are in what is the end game right now because you're enjoying what comes before the end. And some people kind of forget that they can blaze their own path. If you don't like the direction you're going, stop and ask yourself why you're going that way. And if the answer is, well, because I always have, then that's not a good answer. Change your path. That is something that you have to learn as a human being, is those mental barricades and constructions you've made are of your own designs. People have called them funny things along the way, like, a prison of your own design, but they're actually a very true statement. It is something that you did to yourself. You decided that you are going to be an 80-hour-a-week content creator, and this is who you are and who you must be, and there is no other option. And then you go, well, actually, I make about the same amount of money if I'm only doing this 40 hours a week, and none of my contacts are mad at me, and actually my life is better. Wow. I guess I didn't have to. And you start coming up with these epiphanies where, you realize that you're the one that put a lot of these pressures on you. And they do come oftentimes from outside sources when we were young or when we believed a friend incorrectly.
Yeah.
But they became our decisions at some point. And so we have to be the ones that decide to stop listening to whatever made us listen in the first place and change our direction.
Yeah. The sometimes the way that it was described to me is sometimes we have to take responsibility for things that were done to us, even though we are not to blame. That was a big thing for me in dealing with like some of the things that have happened to me in my life, is that like I am now as an adult responsible for like cleaning up that mess of whatever had happened. And I think that, learning that you can do that you have like agency, that you're in control of your mind. You can learn how to like win those fights. It's just really hard. And I'm also not, as somebody who takes psychoactive medication every day, I am not telling you to like, get off, and I'm not telling anybody to get off their meds. I'm saying that there's another side of all of the medication and work that you can be doing to continue to help yourself, because I think you mentioned, choice, right? Like you're choosing to put the framework up in your head. You need to choose to take it down too. And you're choosing to get, in my mind, this is where I went. I was like, you're choosing to get therapy. You're choosing to get back on all the medication that you need. So why don't you start making, even more choices to make your life better instead of feeling like you can't do anything? You mentioned like, I have to be an 80-hour-a-week content creator, and that cut me to my soul. Because that was like that's like a really good way of summarizing my thought process. Because so when you like lock into something like that mentally, right, you have to say no to everything else. And at first it feels like control and it feels like freedom. You're like, I'm finally doing what I want. And then suddenly it's like you're this tight laser beam of focus. And then suddenly you start seeing like stuff happening over there. And you're like, but wait, you're like, oh, wait. And then, but now you're stuck, right? Like you can't, you think this is where I have to be. But you can go look at all the other pretty lights if you want. As somebody who gets distracted often, trust me, you will be okay.
Absolutely.
If you go chasing the pretty lights.
One of my favorite phrases in the entire world is, where energy flows, progress grows. It's one of my favorite ones. I know I'm I sometimes stutter, so I not stutter, but like mumble. So for those of you in the audience, the phrase is where energy flows, progress grows, and that phrase to me has always meant that you have X amount of energy every day. Everybody thinks of it as us as time, right? I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time for that. You do. You have enough time for anything you want, but it's where you put your energy that matters. We all have the same 24 hours. It's just a matter of prioritizing where you put in your energy, and that is what is going to grow in your life.
That is. So you mentioned earlier, like thinking one step beyond your actions. Like that's the thing. Like everyone is really obsessed with like organizing their time. And what I have discovered is that it is more about managing your energy, because you're right. And as like a perfectionist, there's always time. like, you know, like, do I have time for this? Yes, I can get this done. I don't need to sleep because I can turn myself into a robot. So like, so for me, it took me a long time to realize that when people asked me that question, they weren't implying that I should create that outcome. They were really asking, like, is it possible in the scope of health to like land on this deadline? And I'm like, oh no, I'd have to not sleep for a week. So it's that cracks me up. I'm always willing to spend all the time on things that matter. And something that I've only really recently became aware of is like, well, there's this whole other like status bar that you need to be paying attention to. And there's things that you can spend your time on that help you out in that department, like taking a break. or you know, binge watching TV, or just not working, like in general, not doing work. No. No.
I mean, no. I'm 100% agreeing with you. Like imagine a world where people don't take care of themselves. Oh, you don't have to, because we live in it, and that's, you know, that's really where we're at. Is you know, the double-sided coin, right? So, on the one hand, we have people who are always tired, but they never sleep. And, you know, you have to take a moment to understand that if your well runs dry, you can't pour for anybody else. And that comes for your family, that comes for your job, that comes for the people you care about. Like, you're going to run out eventually. And there's a difference between refueling yourself and having purpose. Here's a great example for me during the pandemic. I did not get out into my wheelchair, even to run around the outside of my place where I live very much. Because if I couldn't go do anything, I don't see much purpose in running around the outside of my house. It doesn't do anything for me. It's not good. And that philosophy had consequences for me. My muscles are a little weaker now after the pandemic, and now I'm going to have to PT some things because I was stubborn and I chose not to do that. But that didn't refuel me in a way that I needed to. My version of downtime was I needed to just go absorb some new material from a TV show, from a book, from an audiobook, from listening to a podcast. I needed to infuse myself with more inspiration because that's what I was running low on. And so when I chose to recharge my battery, that's what I chose to do. And so sometimes people will call me very, very strong. And I bristle against that. I'm not strong. I'm resilient. I'm incredibly resilient. And I get that resiliency by continuously finding new areas to keep that well full.
That is such a huge missing component, I think, when it comes to anyone that has a creative job, is when you start, you have all kinds of inspiration. And I think especially like when you get into like a senior role in any company, part of your job is being creative. It might be like a creative way to put out fires, you know, for like what, but you have to be creative, right? And when you stop feeding the things that are where your ideas, like the wellspring of your ideas, come from, you start to feel that, like, you start to stagnate. You start to feel like nothing is working anymore, and like, why isn't this old way of doing things helping, and I don't know what to do. There have been times when I've sort of really gotten like cloistered off and like focused on one project, and by the time I come out of it, because I haven't been doing any of the usual like you said, like absorbing media and like just being curious about things, I almost feel like I've been holding my breath, and I'm burned out, and I need like 2 weeks to recover before I can get on the same page as everyone else.
Yeah, no, I mean, especially when it comes to recharging your own battery. Everybody's like, hey, you just need to go lie on a couch and look at the sand or look at the sky, look at the stars. And it's like, but that's not true. And it's one of the most dangerous things I think we talk about is we're not car batteries, we're not spark plugs. You can't just plug in the same values for all of us. That doesn't recharge me. You literally, as the famous Professor Broman, could pay for me to go on a vacation cruise and the Atlantic for 10 days. Steve, you've been working too hard. Here's a gift. Go on this vacation. And I would come back bored out of my mind. I would feel so drained because I've been cut off from everything, and I would be unhappy. Because that's not how I recharge. That's how the Hollywood fantasy of recharging is. For me, recharging is going and playing games with my closest friends offline where no one else is watching. It's not having to be a performer. It's not having to care about teaching or educating on Twitter. It's just being social. Or it's just having a deep conversation of philosophy. I love philosophy. I love, it actually took Troy Baker is the first one to notice it after almost 9 months of being on Twitter. My call for help for Spawn Together, I say at the end that I want him to do good before I have to leave this big blue marble. That's a reference to Carl Sagan. And no one had caught it yet. And I was really happy when somebody finally did. Like, that inspires me. When people get these deep-seated references, it just makes you smile. That's how I recharge. I'm sure you're the same. I'm sure there are things that recharge you that people don't think would.
Yeah. The thing that recharges me is doing nothing intentionally. Like meditating. Like, legitimately, it is and I'll say this with full confidence, for somebody with my personality type and my way of being, the fact that that's what I need to do feels like bullshit. But it is, and I love it. But even that, like, the thing that I learned about doing that is if I'm not being curious about things in the rest of my life, when I sit to meditate, my mind doesn't have anything to like play with. And right. And so I'll ideate more on, emotional things or things that I'm, again, it's all a practice of coming back. But like, those are the things, instead of what I've had a few times, which are just like, is like a almost surreal experience that it was, that was 10 minutes and I just solved like 4 really huge problems for work. And I have no idea how that happened. Which is great. So meditation was like a really big hidden one for me. And then, philosophy is a huge part of my life. It's actually, it's what I need to kind of consume to drive the way that I like to look at the world. Because I'm always, I like, you mentioned a lens, and I was like, like worldview, right? So like I'm obsessed with seeing how things look with all of these different lenses all the time. And so feeding that part of myself always brings me like great like satisfaction, joy, and inspiration.
Yeah. I think it's important to recognize what refuels you and to be okay with that and embrace it. I think, if you're someone who has to do something that's not traditionally relaxing to others, then do it. I have plenty of people in my life who like to work, but I have a couple who are honestly unhappy if they're not working. And it's like, well, then are you burning out? No, I love working. Great, go do work. Why are you trying to make yourself relax? Well, everyone says I have to. Why are you listening to that? Like, if you're not burning, if you're happier doing one thing than the other, if it's not hurting anybody else, go do it.
Yeah. That is that's very true. Sometimes I've fallen into that trap. I need to relax, and it's like, no, you need to go get that project done, and then you need to relax, and it's okay if no one else understands. Now go do it.
And because you're gonna be, that's the thing too, is people again thinking one step ahead.
Mhm.
Let's say you listen to the person who says go relax, right? You're gonna be thinking about that project that's not done the entire time that you're relaxing. So you're not really relaxing. You're just like premeditating what you're gonna do when you get to the project, which is just pre-work.
Yeah, exactly. It's pre-work. Pre-working all the time. So so I wanted to ask you, since you brought up philosophy, how like, is that just like a hobby for you, like consuming it? Is it like or is it like a very, you mentioned that it's very important to you, but how did you first encounter it, I guess, would be my question.
I mean, I love the teachings of Marcus Aurelius, of course, one of the great philosophers. But the silliest one that got me into the whole thing, believe it or not, was the "Don't Be Afraid to Wear Sunscreen" by Baz Luhrmann. It's such a silly little thing, but it was a great song full of great life advice.
Are you talking about the one that was like, "Don't forget to wear your sunscreen"?
Yes.
Like at the end, and it's just like a guy talking life advice style. Oh, I remember that.
That literally got me kind of interested in this entire of how quickly you could dispense wisdom if you found a viral way to do it. And it kind of deep-seated, again, you were talking about that thing that happens when you're very young, that you don't realize the time that's happened, but then later it forms into who you are. I think that was one of the formative, inside out kind of moments where something crystallized into an important memory of mine. There's actually a line in it that there's a lot of good life advice in that, but there's one that goes, listen, wait, how do you manage to get through the day? Don't listen to the beauty magazines. They're only going to make you feel worse. If you figure out how to do this, tell me how. And that line was like the biggest, like, oh snap. Like, here's a guy writing about life advice in a popular song, and he actually says, like, here's a problem. I don't know the answer because I don't think it exists. And that was the biggest statement I got out of that. And that sort of put me on this weird path of reading all kinds of philosophy books and whatnot to figure out, what the great philosophers thought about life and how there are just some problems that can't be solved. They can just simply be made better.
That song was like, man, I completely forgot about that. And I agree. Like, there's so many things that you brought up. I'm trying to like bring it to a point. But I guess maybe the place to start would be, so you're a fan of Marcus Aurelius. Would you consider, like, are you a fan of Stoic philosophy, or is there a philosophy that you find is most helpful to you?
I find that the questioning oneself philosophy tends to run through me, and you can kind of see it in my nightly questions that I do on Twitter. You can see it even in this interview where I've turned the interview back on you a few times. Yes. I like to teach by asking questions. I like to have a point, but I'm going to ask you a question to get you to come there, because I could tell you a story, but then it's my story and you might not get the point. But if I say a question to you that triggers something in your mind and you get to where I'm trying to drive you, well, then I've done my teaching and all is well.
Yeah. There's a satisfaction in helping guide people to the answers that they're looking for.
Yep.
So what other where else do you glean philosophical insights from when you're looking to think about something, when you're looking to think about yourself or life or a problem, or
the greatest thing I think I've ever learned about philosophy is that although there are greats, that you can read along the way to figure out, especially like a philosophy degree. There is a lot of wisdom in everyday things if you stop looking at something at its face value and you think about what it is. For example, watching cartoons is some of the most life lesson laced material that ever is written. Cartoons meant for children have some of the biggest life lessons. Whether it's, be good to your friends, don't betray your friends, here's something you need to watch out for. And it's always hidden underneath, guidelines of, some silly thing happening, but they're always in there. And same thing with like melodramas and stuff like that, the good ones, they always have some sort of driving theme that is pushing the episode to come to a conclusion where you've learned something by the end. Whether or not you needed to relearn the lesson or you just needed to see it from a different angle, there's a lot of things you can get from everyday life.
I love that. I absolutely love. I love that. Because it's true. There's so much to learn just by looking around and seeing what there is, the kind of like what there is to offer, what the universe has to look back at you when you're trying to find stuff. Man, I have so many philosophy questions.
Fortunately, it's a 6-hour podcast. So sure.
It's unfortunately a 6-hour podcast, and I won't be awake for 2 days. This will be a good one. If you could recommend a work on philosophy for folks to check out that maybe they haven't heard of, what would you recommend to them?
A work on philosophy that you haven't heard of. I mean, so since we're going the theory of everyone's heard of the greats, one of the recent ones I loved was a book titled "The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F," spelled out.
Yeah.
The work by that guy, Mark Manson, amazing. The What the Fuck podcast, another good one. Those guys have of everyday philosophy. They have good ways. The same kind of stoic Aurelius Plato. Same. Here's a story, and here's some questions to go along with it. And what did you get out of this? And then they just give you the city, and you have to figure out what the street address is that you're supposed to find, because it's up to you where you end up. But here's the ballpark. And I really respect that kind of thing. I don't know if you've ever read that book, but it's really good.
I read it for the first time last year.
Nice.
It was amazing. And I think that a lot of people wouldn't have expected that book to come up as like your philosophy recommendation. So I actually think you did a phenomenal job answering that question. And it was the first book I read in like 10 years. I'm not even shitting you. So like it was quite a, but then since then it really made me realize like, oh, there's a lot I've been missing out on. This was part of this creativity thing that I didn't recognize. But that book was huge for me because it gave me the layout of my mental landscape. Like it gave me the map of the city in a different way than I had been served that information before. So I could like reorient everything, and it made a lot more sense. Oh God,
again, it's that life story, way of leading people to think. He tells a great story about a grandmother who was clipping coupons and paying in the supermarket, and it's in a chapter all about being who you are, and you wouldn't think it has anything to do with each other. But the life lessons, for those of you who haven't read the book and may interest you in reading it, is he tells the story about how aggravated he was watching a grandma pulling out coupons and giving them to the cashier when everybody in line was obviously frustrated and the cashier was flustered. And the woman just kept doing it because she didn't care. And you think it's like, oh, this is a story about not wasting people's time. And he flips it and he says, she stopped worrying if people were mad at her for doing what she needed to do to survive because she was a widower. She had no one else at home and she had very little cash. And that effort that she had to put in to clip the coupons was so that she could survive. Stop caring about what people are thinking about you when you need to do what you need to do to live. And I was like, wow. that flipping that narrative upside down, that's the kind of thinking I love.
Yeah, that is yeah, it's like always it's always like a mind fuck. You're always just like, wait, no, you're right. Fine, I'll be nicer, right? Like it's for me, I kind of had a moment like that reading the book he talks about, feeling like, well, if you like believe all the lies that people say about you, like if somebody says that you suck your whole life, and then you believe that you suck, you're going to walk around your whole life trying to find things that tell you that you suck. And then you're just going to, like whatever. But eventually you just start making everything about you. And so like it becomes impossible for you to not see anything and assume it's somehow going to make your life worse.
That's true.
Yeah. And that was like, he does such a good job laying things out, and I didn't get there to that point, but like I saw the end point. I was like, oh, that's what's at the end of this road. I don't like that. That's not like I'm
not gonna go down that road.
I'm not interested. I would like some help, and then I definitely, it was run around like all over the place trying to figure out like, who am I? Like,
I think there's such value in that though. Like I personally have told people a lot for years, like if you don't know who you are, that's okay. Figure out who you don't want to be, and then don't go down those paths. Like that may not lead you to exactly who you want to be, but it'll get you closer. And that sometimes if you die just being close to who you wanted to be, that's better than a lot of people do. Like my mom had a boyfriend who was, selfish and kept to himself and didn't have any friends. And I was when I was a kid, and I was like, oh, I don't want to end up like that. Friends it is, and so
friends it is.
Friends it is. So
I love that.
Yeah, but it works, and I think when we're thinking about who we want to be and the points at the end of the road, it's okay to just decide who don't you want to be, right? And figure out from there, like maybe this is not the direction I want to go, so it must be that way.
It's funny to me how everybody thinks like there's an answer to the who am I question. Sometimes because like every time we figure it out, it changes. Because we're never working on all of who we are at the same time. So something's going to go untended, or it's like not going to come along for the ride with everyone else. It's super interesting. Almost along the same lines as just be the person, like just, know who you don't want to be. Right. Yeah. A philosophy that's been meaningful to me lately. I've been reading a lot of Joseph Campbell's works on mythology, and his sort of core concept for being human, or for, taking the fantastic journey of life, right? To truly enjoy the time that we have, is to follow your bliss, to follow the thing that brings you and those around you the most, ecstatic joy. And that is, it's interesting to me because growing up, like I was taught that philosophy was bullshit, very intentionally. They're like, that is garbage. Follow your dreams. No dreaming. No, like
no
it was
dreaming.
Work. Like it was very much like, this is like, it's fun to think like that, but that's impractical. And so I always thought I had to know who I needed to be, and I had to know what I wanted to do with my life. And if I didn't have the answers to that question, like the people around me would generally treat me like I was less valuable. So I've had to figure it out, and it didn't go well. But
I'd imagine not.
Yeah, right. It never goes well. But then I started streaming, and I didn't know that that's what I was doing. I was just following the thing that made me and everyone else around me visibly happy. It was, my bliss. And I have been trying to ask that question. Like, does this lead you to a place where everything is happier or better or kinder? And it's really helped. It's really helped soften me as a person. I know that that might be hard to believe if for people in chat, but it has, because you start to realize that maybe it's okay that you don't like stuff that other people like. Maybe it's okay that you don't understand this piece of art, or why everyone likes that video game or this music. Maybe you can just like appreciate that's the good shit for them, just like yours is the good shit for you, and we can all have a nice day, instead of trying to do this I don't know, argument that we all know exactly what we like and everyone who's different from us sucks. Which is
a little weird to me, like, that people are so resistant to the idea that they may need to work on themselves. It has always kind of boggled my mind as someone who, and I guess maybe one could argue as someone who's disabled, I'm a little more obvious that there are things that may not work properly for me, but they're not things I can really change. I'm not going to be able to work out and suddenly get my things to work. But when you talked about your mind being so powerful, I mean, I have the great example for me is an actual thing. I was told that I could not raise my arms above basically my shoulders because gravity, and there's no way that I can lift my arms up. And I could not. I could not lift my arms up. There was a while where I could hold my arms up in the air and whatnot, and I could do that. Couldn't do that at a certain age, unless I was asleep. If I was asleep, I'd have my arm down at my side, and I would wake up and it would be over my head. I'm the only one that was there to move it. I put my arm up over my head. But if I was awake, I couldn't, because enough doctors had gotten into my head to tell me it wasn't possible. And that kind of strong mental power is what our brains do to us. We do absorb that. We believe that. If someone continually tells us that what we're doing is garbage or has no meaning, it's really hard to push it out. And so that's why you have to guard your own well so closely. If you have someone who's poisoning it, someone who's putting in that venom, kick them out as fast as you can, because it will slowly seep into your well and into who you are as a person.
Yeah, you have to be careful of what's around you. That's another that was another big, it's like a big part of I think that 2020 gave everybody like a break, right? Yeah. When it came to, as somebody who was out all the time and like constantly traveling or going to conventions or like whatever, I thought I would be able to handle it because I stream. I'm at home all the time. I'll be good. Nope.
Nope.
Wrong. But it was difficult. But the break from just seeing anyone that wasn't my wife, and really just sort of taking that time to go inward, I really realized, like, wow, like I let a lot more stuff in here than I enjoy. Like, I told Amy, like, it was like after my first session, like with my I had finished the book. I just finished The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, and I just got done with like my first therapy session. I did like a journaling exercise, and it felt like somebody like finally like showed me where the light switch was, and I like flipped it on, and it was like that. It was like one of those old 90s cartoons where the guy's like, "Oh, I'm in it." Like, "Oh man, this garbage dump feels like it's big," and they flip the light on and they do like the zoom out, and you're like, "Oh damn, that's big," and then they go like boom, boom, and then like they hit it back twice, and it's like the size of the U.S. or something.
Right.
It felt like that. I was like, "Oh, I have work to do." But it was like all that stuff that you mentioned, the things that get in your head that like hold you in and that prevent you from like accessing other parts of yourself in very real, in mental ways and in very physical ways as well. It can,
you have to like lean on others and let them kind of remind you sometimes that you have vend yourself in, and that's why it's super, super important. I know, especially as an adult man, making friends not easy, and quite often sucks. Honestly, like half the
Honestly.
people, you don't know what their agendas are. You don't know if you can trust them. You know, like especially if you're a content creator, who's trying to use you and who's trying to be kind to you, and it's like you got to weed out the good from the bad, and man, there can be moments, but here's the thing: you got to find the ones who will help you walk in a straight line. The ones who will tell you when, hey man, you're getting in your own head. You need to break out. Hey man, just so you know, social media, it's not the end of the world.
Mhm.
It is, it's literally just the social media. Go walk around your house or breathe some fresh air. Like it's okay. Those people that are mad at you are robots from another country. It doesn't matter. So,
They're not people.
no, right.
They're robots from another country. It is hard. Especially with social media, because and making content, right? Like you hit on, I think, like a lot of the really difficult nuances of, I think, being in the games industry or anything adjacent to it, is that you really don't know when you're meeting somebody. Like, okay, I'm gonna ask you a question. I'm gonna take a trick from your book, right? I'm gonna ask you a question. All right, okay. So like, if you're talking to somebody and you say what you do, and you're like, I work for this is like a gaming associated charity, and they say like, oh, gaming, I don't know anything about that. Are you happy immediately?
I am. Yeah.
Exactly, because me too, because I think it's because internally I know I can trust this person. If I have a good time, it was just a good time. If it was a bad time, they suck. No, if it was a bad time, it was just a bad time, and it didn't have anything to do with anything else. That is hilarious.
That 100% makes sense to me. Yeah, I feel the same way whenever I meet somebody who, it's always flattering when someone's like, "Oh, you're so and so from so and so." It's like, "Yep, that's me." But it's so refreshing when and I can only imagine how actual A-list movie stars feel when they're just like, "Oh, somebody who hasn't seen my work, woohoo!"
Oh
Like
yeah.
that's gotta be fantastic.
Yeah, right. Like could you imagine being stranded on an island? Who would you pick? And you ask a celebrity, and they're like, I don't know. What do you mean? Like, no, somebody who has no idea who I am. Can I have that? It's just a relationship with someone. That is, yeah. I always get a little bit relieved, and it's tough. Making friends is hard.
Especially middle ages. I mean, a lot of people have kids or families or careers.
Yeah.
Everybody's always busy, and I mean, just like that joke we made at the beginning, being friends in your 30s and 40s is just texting each other back and forth that you should meet for lunch until you die. I mean, that's
Absolutely. That's how it feels like. It's a constant game of schedule charts for everyone all the time. Steven, thank you so much for taking the time today to join me and to talk about all of this incredible stuff. You're a really insightful person, and I loved having you on the podcast, and I really want to have you on again to discuss other things in the future, so we should definitely do that. More philosophy. We can do like a philosophy episode. Yes. So, but for now, since we're coming up to the end of the episode, I'm going to pass it off to you. This is your moment. You want to plug anything, let anyone know what you've got going on, what you're doing. Now is the time.
BuildATeddyBear.com is a great website where you can build a teddy bear. You should go there and, no, I should actually do real plugs. Okay. Well, if you're interested in me as a person, so I'm often known as the COO from AbleGamers, and I do love accessibility, but like I was talking before, we went on the air, I am a three-dimensional person. So are you. We have different interests outside of our main wheelhouse, and what I'm pushing to do is to become more of a motivational, inspirational speaker. I want to make people feel good by imparting those philosophies I've learned along the way. So you want to follow me on Twitter, you can do so. My name's actually spelled Steven Spohn, and if you want to do it on Twitch, it's the phonetic way, Steven Spohn. And I'm usually playing variety stuff Wednesday through Sunday on Twitch. And I'm doing a current thing where I'm raising money. I'm raising $1 million for AbleGamers with a campaign called Spawn Together. And a lot of the people that I've been talking to out there who have been saying, wow, thanks for doing this. This is, fantastic. You're raising money, and thank you. And I always like to remind them, like, don't thank me. It's not me. It's the people who are answering. I've been for my nerds out there for LOTR, I've been calling it I'm just lighting the pyres. The beacons are being lit.
Oh my God.
That's what I'm trying to do. And I lit the beacons and people are answering the call. And, together, one at a time, no matter your size, we're going to raise $1 or $100 until, we reach the million. And then we're going to help a lot of people along the way.
I love the Beacons of Gondor scene. So yeah, no, that was like the perfect metaphor.
My chat has been like, it's turned it into a meme now where it's like Spawn Door calls for aid.
Oh my God, that's amazing. Spawn Door calls for aid. That is, yeah. So please answer the call for aid. I want to do some streams for y'all, so we should definitely make that happen on my side as well. Yeah. Yeah, this was absolutely incredible. Chat, thank you for listening today. This is like day 2 after my COVID vaccine, and I am cloudy and well, thank you so much for listening. If you would like to subscribe to the podcast and all that stuff, you can. But more important than that, if you heard anything today that we were talking about and it made you think of someone, it would mean the world to me if you were to just share this podcast with them. The whole point of doing this is to share knowledge and information and help folks. So that would mean more to me than anything else. Thank you so much again, Steven, for joining us, and for everybody listening. We appreciate you, and we will talk to you next time. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.